Day trading conviction. How do you build conviction as a beginner day trader when you first start day trading and you really have no proven results? You don't really have a plan. You don't really know what you're doing. And that's one of the hardest things about becoming a day trader is over time making trades every single day on similar setups over and over. You start to learn a couple of different things. You start to learn, okay, maybe I'm buying the top, or okay, I keep selling right before it bounces. Okay, I keep selling right before the stock goes to a new high. And those are three things that you will not learn just by reading a course or just by trying to become a day trader. Those are things that you're going to learn over time. And what I want to talk about here in this video is, as a new day trader, what you should really be focused on. Forget about the profits, forget about making tons and tons of money, but let's just talk about what you really should be focused on as a new day trader. We're going to talk about it here in this video, so make sure you guys stay tuned. What's going on, guys? Patrick here. Today I want to talk about, again, a very simple premise that most people, when they first start day trading, they just forget about, or I guess they don't really know. Most people aren't taught this. Most people don't talk about this. Most people don't tell you, hey, when you first start out day trading, you should really just be focused on, learning, finding setups, seeing these setups over and over, not just trying to get rich. And that was one of the things that I did as a new day trader. Trust me, I did this. I'm sure you guys are doing it too as new day traders. When you first start out, all you're thinking about is profits, profits, profits. You want to get rich. You want to make tons of money. You're not worried about actually figuring out how to day trade, not learning how to day trade. All you're worried about is trying to get rich. And that's the biggest misconception for any trader, I don't know why I did that, but for any trader in general. When you first start out, you gotta spend time, you gotta put in the effort, and you gotta really just focus on small gains. And the reason I say small gains is because when you size in small, a couple things happen. When you have a small size in a trade, you have less emotion. You actually end up letting the trade do what it's supposed to do, maybe bounce off support and then go back to new highs. You limit your risk when you're not buying as many shares as possible. A lot of people will watch videos of Ross Cameron where he's buying 3,000 or 4,000 shares at a time. He's just hitting his hockey. And it seems like it's easy, right? It seems like when the stock's going higher and higher, all you need to do is just boom, 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 hockey, boom, 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 hockey out and make money. And I wish it was that easy. There's going to be days where it's going to be that easy and it's going to trick you. It's going to tell you, and your brain's going to tell you, wow, all I need to do is just sit here and bam, 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 hit that hockey every time the stock keeps going higher and I'm going to make money, right? I'm going to make tons of money. But what people don't focus on is the fact that if you're taking trades every single day and there's correlation or there's similarities in these trades where, let's say you have a red day and all of your trades look the same. You bought the top and you sold the bottom. What did that just tell you? First off, you're doing something wrong. You're buying the top and you're selling the bottom. But secondly, it's not that you're a terrible day trader in a sense. It's not that you can't make money as a day trader. It's the fact that you're not putting in the time to see these results. And that's one of the things that not that I have a luxury of now, now that I've actually been doing this long enough, I've learned all the things to not do, everything that I shouldn't have done or what I could do differently. And I've been able to improve on that. I've been able to figure out, hey, this idea, this strategy does not work. This strategy here, although it's hard in terms of having patience, waiting for the setup and really just waiting for that setup, it's a difficult thing to have patience when you find a setup that takes patience, that takes time to form. It's difficult as a trader, as a new trader at least, to be able to have the discipline to not want to just jump in at any moment, because you got to wait for that setup. You got to wait for the conditions to get to a point where you're like, hey, every time this happens, every time the stock pulls back to support, it consolidates, it's showing support, it's above the EMAs. Every time this happens, I'm buying and I'm making a small profit. It's consolidating, I'm buying at that level, and then it bounces. And that's what we really got to train ourselves to do. And another thing that also becomes an issue is I'm battling this right now. This is definitely a personal issue for me as, 3 or 4 years later here trading. What my problem is not identifying a entry. My biggest issue is taking profit too early and then not letting the trade work its way out. If I look back at all my futures trades, if I look back at all my trades, every single winner that I had, every single one, every single trade that I made, it ended up going 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 handles higher. And I know it's easy to say in hindsight. It's easy to be like, well, you could have got rich, you could have done this. It's easy to sit here in hindsight and say that, hey, I could have made this much more money on every single trade. But what I'm identifying or what I'm seeing by looking back at my past trades is that I'm taking profit for no real reason other than me being up a couple $100. Where I'm in a trade, I see that I'm up a couple $100 and I'm like, well, it's time to take profit, right? Instead of actually looking at the chart and seeing like, okay, wow, everything is looking bullish. We've never dropped below this point. Everything is looking good. Everything's moving higher. So why should I be selling? And that's what I've really got to focus on now, is because I can look back at my trades and I can see, hey, my biggest losers were trades that I obviously did not cut off my losers. I didn't cut my losers off quickly enough. I was stubborn. And then my winners aren't working to their full potential, where if I'm making a couple $100 a day, those couple $100 a day, although, don't get me wrong, a couple $100 a day is great. If I can maximize that, where if I'm making $200 a day, but all of my trades are going another 5 handles, and I can make $500 a day, I need to make sure that I'm letting those trades work out and get to that point. Again, because it comes down to risk to reward. So if I'm taking profit, at $100, $200 every single time I'm in a trade and I'm just getting excited or becoming emotionally connected to my P&L at that point, if I'm taking profit early, I'm removing that risk to reward. So even though the 4 trades that I take are correct in nature, those 4 trades I made money on, and I'm making $100, $200 per trade, my loser, the one loser that I might take, might end up being a $300, $400 loser, and that's going to wipe away too much profit from those winning trades. So I really need to make sure that when I do get into a winning trade, when I'm in a winning trade and it's doing what it needs to do, it's following the trend, it's everything that I want it to be, I need to let that trade work its way out. I need to make sure that I'm not just entering a trade because I see the setup working, or I see the setup there, I see my entry. I need to also be using that same thinking to analyze why I'm taking profit. Okay, I'm up $100, we're pushing through resistance. I need to identify the profit indicators just as much as I identify the entry indicators, right? So if I can identify that everything is looking good for an entry, I need to identify, is everything looking good for me to hold a stock and continue to hold it to profit? Again, it goes back to the risk to reward. So if I'm risking $100, $200 per trade and I'm only capturing, $100, maybe $50 per trade, it's just not good enough to really maximize my risk to reward. Obviously, each of these trades that I'm going into, they end up going higher, and that's totally fine. We know that, at the end of the day, these things are going to go higher or lower depending on whatever you're doing, shorting or buying. But I need to make sure that if I'm taking these trades over and over, right? If I'm taking the same exact setups over and over, and I'm building that confidence, I'm seeing how when I do enter a trade, it's working the way that I want it to work. It's doing exactly what I want it to do. I need to make sure that I take profit at a key area, not just because I see my P&L being green. Just because I'm up $100 does not make that a good trade. Just because I take profit at $200 in profit does not make that a good trade, when I could maximize that risk to reward and maximize my overall, profitability here. Because one of the things a lot of people get confused about is just because you're correct 95% of the time doesn't mean you're an amazing day trader. It just means that you're, either scalping or whatever it is. Your 5% losers might be bigger than, 30 to 40% of your winners. And that's the one thing that a lot of people get confused about. Okay, yeah, I can scalp and I can make $100 every single trade. But then when I do have a loser, my loser is $300 or $400. So that's an issue. And we got to address that issue as traders in general. And I think you guys are probably battling that same issue. I think a lot of people will say this, that they end up getting into a trade, they have a perfect setup, and they end up taking profit too early. So you got to ask yourself, why are you taking profit? What's the reason that you're taking profit? Are you taking profit just because your P&L is green? Just because it's like a big green dot and it's like, hey, green, green, green money? Or are you taking profit because you're seeing an actual reason to take profit? Are you taking profit because the stock looks like it hit a top? Is it hitting resistance? What's the actual reason to take profit? That's what we've got to focus on, and that comes from just building up that confidence of trading for years and seeing these setups over and over and building up that confidence to be like, hey, this is a winner. This is a trade that I've seen happen over and over. I've seen this same setup over and over. I know this is a very high probability trade. It's time for me to size into it. It's time for me to make some money. That's what you got to be asking yourself every single trade. And again, when you first start out, just trade with small size and build up that confidence where you're like, okay, bam, bam, bam. I made 10 trades this week. I made 10 trades this week. I profited on 7 of those trades. I let the trade work out. I only had 3 losers. My 3 losers were smaller than my 7 winners. Obviously, they should be much smaller. But in general, these setups that I'm taking, if I'm correct 7 out of 10 times, if I can take those profits. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to be right all the time. But when you do have a winner, when you do enter a trade and you do have a winning trade, that profit should be, 3, 4, 5 times larger than your largest loss of the week, if that makes sense. So everything's got to be risk to reward, and it just comes with overall building up that confidence time after time and time after again, time and time again. And that's really what it comes down to. A little bit of a rant here for you guys. If you're not focused enough on your actual trades, your profit targets, forget about your P&L, take away your P&L, focus on the trade, focus on the profit target, focus on why you entered that trade in the first place. Did you enter the trade because it's holding the VWAP? Did you enter the trade because it's holding an overall trend? Is it still holding the overall trend now that you're in the profit? Ask yourself these questions, my friends. Ask yourself these questions.